we're limiting what the location
Okay, good. I
is.
just wanted to clarify.
And we're specifically saying that diagnostic tests shall not be performed and dangerous drugs shall not be prescribed, period.
I think what Dr. Waterhouse is getting at is if you have a large clinic that's open on a Saturday and they're performing a whole bunch of other services and they have one room where they're running a vaccination clinic, is that what?
Well, that would be an example. There's, or just anybody that comes in. Yes, I mean, that was when we would discuss this last time, it was the intent was saying that you can't just have one person coming in with their animal and say, I want to get the vaccines and not have to, and say this qualifies under vaccine clinic.
If we're talking about running a vaccine clinic at a hospital, they're already required to have all the other fixed facility equipment and sanitation requirements
And do
with
physical
the.
exam, medical records.
Well, that's not what this is about. This is about the location,
I know.
not the minimum standards of practice.
Okay.
Okay.
We can move on. I just wanted to,
Highlight that issue,
Yes.
absolutely.
yes. Okay.
I'm sorry, I do have to go back to that issue though, because currently this regulation does provide an exemption to having to establish a VCPR for the vaccination clinics, and that's in the old L. It's being struck.
We talked about this.
So since it's being struck, the question is, are we now requiring a VCPR to be established for the clinics?
So I thought it was that the veterinarian was responsible for evaluating or determining that the patient appears healthy enough to receive vaccines or parasiticides. So that's under, I don't know, this font's too small. C?
But that's not exempting them from the VCPR requirement. So if the intent is that that's what they have to follow and not the full VCPR requirement, we might want to make that a little more clear.
I remember this discussion before.
So that was the intent of putting that sentence
That in
is the
there.
veterinarian's responsible for making sure the patient appears healthy enough
Right.
to, yes, Jennifer.
I actually think the old L is necessary because the way I read B, we can't administer dangerous drugs. So if an animal does have a vaccine reaction, the veterinarian would be prevented from treating that.
I can't
L
tell which
actually
one it
provides for
was.
that if there is a
It's
reaction.
on the
Where's-
second page, yeah.
Oh,
Page
look at,
11.
oh, I have to read here.
Can you scroll to L, please?
Old.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So I can tell you that this is an issue currently where we have large facilities who are operating just on a normal day, and they are still administering vaccinations in a room, and their interpretation of the regulations that they are able to do a vaccination clinic in a room without establishing any VCPR because of how it's currently worded.
I remember this discussion.
And I don't, yeah, and I personally don't think that's appropriate, and I don't think this language refers to that. I don't think this language ever intended to refer to that, to allow that.
Whether it intended to or not, I think that unless you have L, which is saying when the VCPR is required, when you strike it, the normal VCPR language is triggered to where it would be required.
Okay.
And I think that if the intent is to require a VCPR, I think the board should really think about what that does to those people who can't afford a full examination and really want to keep a low-cost vaccination. Because I do think that there's large companies who are offering low-cost or free vaccinations, and if we then require the VCPR for every one of them, I think that that would raise costs onto the consumer.
I mean, the veterinarian can charge whatever they want, which includes doing a free exam. That's not our, I don't think that's our purview. I mean, the veterinarian can charge whatever they want. Jennifer?
I just want to clarify, I can say it is not feasible to have a VCPR for every single animal, but if they're doing anything other than administering a vaccination or an antiparasitic, there would need to be a VCPR. As the RVT, if I give a vaccination and there's a reaction, I'm not going to administer anything else. I'm going to go screaming to the veterinarian, who will then come and establish the VCPR and give that. But the way I read B, they're prevented from doing anything other than vaccinating. They can't give dangerous drugs, prescribe, dispense, or administer. So I think L needs to be in there to give them that authority.
Okay, can you read L? I can't tell.
I agree with Jennifer.
So L reads, if any diagnosis tests are performed or dangerous drugs are provided, administered, prescribed, or dispensed, then a valid veterinary client-patient relationship must be established, including a complete physical exam and medical records as set forth in section 2032.3.
And I don't think that's difficult to achieve. If you have a vaccine clinic and all of a sudden one pet, I mean, you're not establishing these VCPRs for all these vaccines that are being given, but the one pet that is going to need it, you pull that one out from the line and establish a VCPR.
Yes, and
I
so
don't
that's
think-
where the vaccine clinic is out in the park, and yes, I totally agree. But we're talking about, this is a fixed veterinary hospital. And I think they should be establishing VCPRs with
So-
everything that comes in.
I'd like to point out that in C, we have this language that says notwithstanding section 2032.1, which is the VCPR regulation. So ignoring the VCPR regulation, the veterinarian is responsible for evaluating that the patient appears healthy enough to receive vaccines or parasiticides, as well as providing consultation, et cetera. That is showing the board's intent to limit this practice to only vaccinations and immunizations. If there's any further need for diagnostics or more complex controlled substances, those services could not be provided at this event.
And that's the way, that was the intention of this whole section, yes.
Yes.
Okay, I agree.
So I have a whole nother idea because we like ideas
Let's
around
hear
here.
it.
Okay, so for the introductory paragraph, animal vaccination location, the first sentence that you see before you would be stricken and instead state, for purposes of these regulations, an animal vaccination location shall mean a location established for a scheduled vaccination event that is limited to only providing to the public vaccinations and preventative procedures for parasite control. I was trying to, move the scheduled event up closer to the location. The location is only established for the scheduled event.
Okay.
What we were talking about before
Yeah.
in this discussion is around and around.
Okay, can you read it again?
Yeah?
Just
yeah.
one more time.
One more time.
You get rid of that temporary word.
Yes, thank you for remembering temporary.
For purposes of these regulations, an animal vaccination location shall mean a location established for a scheduled vaccination event that is limited to only providing to the public vaccinations and preventative procedures for parasite control.
That sounds good.
That's a very first.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
new first sentence of 2030.3.
Yep, I like it.
And the second sentence would say an animal vaccine location should meet
Yes.
the following minimum standards.
Right, with that change to location. And then every other instance of practice In subdivision E, lighting shall be adequate for the procedures to be performed in the vaccination location. And in subdivision I, current veterinary reference material shall be readily available at the location. Bless you.
Going back to Jennifer's question about the old L, then would we still want to keep that in there in case there's a reaction at even one of these scheduled events?
No, because we are prohibiting diagnostic tests from being performed at all, and this authorizes that.
Or dangerous drugs provided, or drugs provided?
Right, if,
Well, if an animal has a reaction to a vaccine, a vet needs to have whatever that is, an emergency kit or something to.
Well, of course.
Help that animal, right? I mean,
Yes, we're
but
not trying to say that it shouldn't, no.
Right, you can't hold their hands on that,
No.
but you're just saying, hey, we're not diagnosing and giving out drugs for other things, but, yeah.
Could we add just verbiage that said unless necessary to deal with an emergency?
no, because we already have that provided for in subdivision K on page 10. It says that the location shall have the appropriate drugs and equipment to provide immediate emergency care at a level commensurate with the specific veterinary medical services provided.
I know, but you're stating two different things. You can't really provide the medical emergency services without a potentially prescription drug. So you can't, you're saying in one sentence, you can't use those, and the next you're saying, well, you have to use those. It doesn't make
No, it's
sense.
two different things.
It's in the same regs. You can't, I mean,
So what we could do is say notwithstanding.
right. That's what I would say.
In K, add to the beginning of that sentence, notwithstanding subdivision or subsection B. Am I citing to the right subsection? That's where diagnostic tests shall not be performed? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so K, notwithstanding subsection B, the location shall have the appropriate drugs and equipment to provide immediate emergency care, et cetera.
That gives you permission then to treat.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, are we in agreement on this? Are we done, Tara?
I'm good. Everyone else? Judy? Alana?
Yeah, I think it looks good. Me too.
With that last wording, then would it be necessary to reinstate L, or is it matter? Then we can keep L stricken? L is the,
Yes.
We can keep L stricken.
Keep L stricken.
I would probably add, so we'll add L back in,
What?
No.
but it needs to be limited.
it does say if any diagnostic tests or perform, the only reason we gave them permission to do that is in an emergency.
Right, and I want to just add pursuant to subdivision K.
Yeah, there we go. That works.
So it would read, if any diagnostic tests are performed or dangerous drugs are provided pursuant to subdivision K.
Then you have to do, just to clarify, then you got to do it, right?
Right, sorry, it needs to say are provided, administered, prescribed, or dispensed pursuant to subdivision K, then a valid VCPR must be established.
Pursuant is a very useful word.
Any other comments? Okay, I think we can move on to 2030.4, small animal house call location, mobile unit, mobile premises.
Not again.
I think this is probably going to, where are the instruments kept? Are they kept in the vehicle
They're in a bag in the vehicle, which then moves into
and
the
the
house.
bag moves into the house?
Do we need practice? Can we just leave it to small animal house call?
Well, yeah, because we then have to provide the definition for purposes of these regulations. A small animal house call shall mean one in which veterinary medicine is being practiced. House call, just ending it there seems odd, so
Okay.
perhaps we
Right.
could just add location
Location.
for consistency. Any public comments?
Location doesn't seem
No,
right
please.
either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to me, location is a little awkward also.
Ambulatory
Yeah.
facility, I think, is better than location.
Small
Cindy
animal
Safeway.
ambulatory facility?
Thank you, Cindy.
Sorry I spoke out so loudly, but locations? Because they're going to go
Oh, sure.
a bunch of
There
different
will be multiple.
houses.
So at one, over the site here, you suggest ambulatory facility.
I would
Can people
confuse that
please
with mobile
identify themselves at the microphone? Sorry.
practices. I would confuse that with mobile
Mark.
practices.
Oh, yeah.
Small animal mobile practice would be confusing.
Well, so this is Tara. I'm looking at 2030.5 minimum standards, large animal ambulatory practice, and that appears to authorize, we'll talk about the term practice in a minute, but large animal ambulatory premises. Nope. You're right. Site, location. I'm trying to use ambulatory and small animal house call location.
Yes.
Because that just continues to maintain this consistency. It's ambulatory, it goes to the animal. Just like, otherwise, are we doing house call practice for large animals? No, we're not. It's ambulatory for them. How?
Because that's the accepted term.
Yeah.
It's a matter of semantics, what the profession has gotten familiar with.
Okay, I'll step down on that one. But I would like to change all terms, practice, all references to practice in the title, first line, third line, to locations.
And I think you could do the same with the large animal ambulatory locations.
Third line.
Or site. Site and location, same.
Okay, so let me be clear. We need a couple more tweaks to 2030.4 minimum standard small animal house call location. For purposes of these regulations, small animal house call locations shall mean locations at which veterinary medicine and its various branches are being practiced, and where veterinary services are being provided to household pets at the location where the animal resides. Continuing, a small animal, small capital S, small animal house call locations shall meet the following minimum standards. So let's go ahead and just agree, perhaps, that all references to practice in this regulation would be changed appropriately with any minor or technical corrections to use the term locations. So practice, global change from practice to locations. Any comments, Alana or Judy?
No, I don't have any. No, it's fine.
Okay. Members of the public? Okay. Moving on, 2030.5 minimum standards, large animal ambulatory locations. For purposes of these regulations, a large animal ambulatory, strike A. For purposes of these regulations, large animal ambulatory locations shall mean locations where veterinary medicine and its various branches are being practiced, either at the location of the animal or by operating in more than one location, providing veterinary services to large animals belonging to multiple clients that are not permanently housed or boarded at that location.
Do we have a definition of large animals?
Yeah, keep going. It says
Yes.
livestock.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. For purposes of this section, large animal pertains to equine and food animals and livestock as defined in subdivisions C and D of the code.
Cleaning, answering machine service.
Next sentence,
shall be delivered.
strike A, capital L, large animal ambulatory locations shall meet the following minimum standards. In case we have missed a reference of practice in this section, I'd like an agreement to make a global change from practice to locations. Any comments or questions? Okay, is there a motion?
I think you've worn us down, Tara. Okay.
I dare someone to read the motion.
Well, the simple motion is to accept
Tara,
the
why
changes.
don't
that
you,
were made.
Tara, why don't you read the motion?
The motion is to approve the proposed regulatory changes as modified, direct the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, authorize the executive officer to make any technical or non-substantive changes to the rulemaking package, notice the proposed text for a 45-day comment period, and if no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, adopt the proposed regulatory changes as modified.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? God forbid. No, I'm sorry. Any other discussion? Any comments from the public? Okay, call for the vote.
Ms. Bowler,
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury, Ms. Laredo,
Aye.
Ms. Mancuso,
Yes.
Dr. Noland,
Yes.
Dr. Nunez,
Yes.
Ms. Yanis,
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. Okay, and moving on to 8C, drug compounding. Okay. Amanda's going to speak on this one.
Okay, so first off, in your packets, there's a memo there, and there's also some proposed language. This is the language that was voted on for animal healthcare tasks for RVTs and drug compounding. The language in the packet has been updated, so I put it on your desk, and it's also on the table over there, so just please reference that. So this topic is being brought up today. It was a request to add it onto the agenda. So the language for drug compounding was approved in October of 2017. And CCR Section 2092, subdivision F1 authorizes RVTs to compound drugs under veterinary supervision. And then the RVT task under indirect supervision, it doesn't specifically identify drug compounding there. So the proposed language for both are included in the packet, and they're here for your discussion and consideration.
So I'd just like to add, the question is whether drug compounding should be added to the list in section 2036. It is currently not in there, so it's not, the proposed language to add drug compounding is not included in this. These revisions were approved for other reasons by the board at a previous meeting. Subsequently, the issue of drug compounding and who should be able to perform that came up with respect to RVTs. So, drug compounding, that language authorizes training of an RVT to perform drug compounding. That those regulations are very specific to only authorize a veterinarian or an RVT to compound drugs. I don't think it's necessary to add drug compounding to 2036 because 2036A says unless specifically so provided by regulation, and then it goes on to list what an RV can and cannot do. The drug compounding language already provides that an RVT can compound drugs. The only question is whether or not a VA or VA CSP should specifically be authorized or not authorized to perform these services. Drug compounding language does not allow a VA or VA CSP to compound drugs. Does the board think that animal health care tasks for RVT, which affects animal health care tasks for VAs under 2036.05, I think, does it need to be explicit? Do you think we need to add drug compounding for RVTs?
I would, just to be complete and to, I would recommend adding it to be complete and for clarity. What does everybody else think?
That was the reason I suggested it to be placed on the agenda, was to put it under 2036 for clarification.
So I think what would be in keeping with the drug compounding language would be to add drug compounding to subdivision C. An RVT may perform the following procedures under indirect supervision of a licensed veterinarian. And right now, we've got administered controlled substances, that's existing law. We're already going to add, through rulemaking, apply casts and splints. And what we're contemplating is adding a new paragraph 3, drug compounding. That, adding it to C means that a VA and VA CSP will not be authorized to provide that service because of how 2036.5 is crafted, which specifically prohibits permit holders in VAs from performing any of the functions or activities specified in subsections A, B, and C of Section 2036.
Well, since the VACSP has to be fingerprinted and they do touch drugs, does it make sense, and this question is to the vets, does it help you guys to have them be a part of this?
It's
Sorry,
really,
Judy-
it's
Judy,
comparing
I'm not a-
apples and oranges.
Talk to.
Sorry, Judy, it's Jennifer. I'm not a vet, but the issue that we had with this was that RVTs are required to go through training, and although the VA CSPs are going through background checks and fingerprinting, there's no education that comes along with that. So with compounding, I know that there was an issue that they didn't think veterinarians should be doing this, and that was a big argument. And then with RVTs, we do have the education that we have to go through, but it seemed like a danger to the public to have non-educated, or I'm not saying that they're not educated, but somebody that doesn't have credentials or licenses doing these tasks.
Not trained. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
And
Dr. Nunez?
I also like the fact there's a definition of what compounding does not include. It does not include reconstitution of a drug pursuant to the manufacturer's direction. For
What,
oral
Mark, where
rectal-
are you, please? What page?
I'm on the proposed language under definitions. 2090 definitions. 4B. 4B.
Where's 4A?
Where is 4A?
I just realized.
4B, this way. Okay, sorry. There's no
Yeah.
pages, numbers, so okay, thank you.
Okay, so it says preparation does not include, or compounded does not include reconstitution of drugs pursuant to the manufacturer's directions for oral, rectal, topical, injectable administration, nor does it include the sole act of tablet splitting or crushing, capsule opening, or the addition of flavoring agents. So all the veterinary assistants and how come I can't say that? VACSP people can do all of those things. But I do agree with Jennifer that to compound I think it should be done by a veterinarian or an RVT.
Yeah, I agree.
And I agree.
Okay, thank you.
want to move on through this?
That's it. I
Is
mean,
that-
the
is that
question
the
was
only-
whether or not to revise 2036 to add drug compounding. The drug compounding regulations themselves have already been approved, and no change needs to be made to those.
Okay,
Because
so
it
this-
only references RVTs.
Okay.
Okay, then I move to alter 2036 to include drug compounding under C.
On
Tara, can I
2036?
get a,
D?
can you read an official motion?
If everyone's in agreement, we could add drug compounding as discussed and then move forward with the rulemaking package. Okay, so the motion would be amending 2036 to add drug compounding to subsection C as paragraph 3. And approve the proposed regulatory changes as modified, direct the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, authorize the executive officer to make any technical or non-substantive changes to the rulemaking package, notice the proposed text for a 45-day comment period, and if no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period, and no hearing is requested, adopt the proposed regulatory changes as modified.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any other discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? Call for the vote.
Ms. Bowler?
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury is absent. Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Ms. Mancuso?
Yes.
Dr. Noland?
Yes.
Dr. Nunez?
Yes.
Ms. Yanis?
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. How's everybody doing? Do you need anybody need a? I know, I know, it's like I'm sorry, I packed my inhaler.
Me too. Right now.
Anybody need a bathroom break? Yes, Tara. Okay, let's take a break. Eight B? Okay, so we're still, agenda-wise, we're still okay.
Yeah, we're fine. That's
Okay. Okay, is everybody ready to go? So what we're going to do is reopen item 8B. And Tara would like to speak.
Alana and Judy, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So in our discussion of item 8B, we were talking about whether or not nonprofits offering low-cost vaccinations who would now be required to register as a premises, although we arguably that's an existing requirement, but the issue came up as to whether or not the $400 annual fee would be excessive and burdensome to provide low-cost vaccinations in needy communities. So we're opening this up just in case anyone wants to make a motion to recommend to the legislature to provide a fee exemption from premises registration for nonprofits and that offer the vaccination clinics.
That,
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to have the exception in there.
okay, can we make that
Should be.
vaccination clinics open? This does not apply to fixed facilities that are nonprofits.
Because there are other nonprofits,
Yes.
right?
Sure. I mean, yeah, I think this is a limited exemption
Okay,
for the vaccination
for vaccination clinics.
and immunization.
Can I get a little clarification, just because we have to explain why we would limit it to that specific location? Or if you're not going to open it up to other nonprofits who have a fixed facility?
Because there's less risk to the public with
Yes.
a vaccine
Yes.
location than there is a fixed practice that is doing diagnostics and using dangerous drugs.
Thank you.
I think in addition, the services being offered are at temporary fixed events, not continuous services throughout the year. So requiring a $400 annual registration for short-term, small numbered events is
If we can make that-
burdensome.
If we can specify that.
I can do that.
So the idea is that we would make this recommendation to the legislature for enactment in the 2019 session, so that potentially, if that passes, the fee exemption would be enacted for 2020, which hopefully by 2020, we're getting our rulemaking package moving, so the fee exemption would be in place by the time the regulations are enacted.
Okay, so we need a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay. And the motion is to do what Tara just stated?
Correct.
And Tara, could you
there a second?
clarify,
Yeah.
yeah, could you clarify the parameters we're giving us in terms of language on these infrequent or?
Yeah, so the parameters for the fee exemption that we're requesting or recommending to the legislature are nonprofit and the like, not-for-profit, nonprofit entities that offer low-cost or no-cost vaccination and immunization services. So the exempting them from the premises registration fee. Is that clear enough?
I'll
It's
second if there isn't one yet.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Any comments from the public?
I have a discussion.
Yes.
So, in these instances of these low-cost vaccine clinics that we're exempting, since they're only happening once a year, does that necessarily mean we have to inspect them?
I think the purpose is, for the registration, is just knowing that they're offering these services so that we are aware that the public is being provided services that may need to be.
But if you set minimum standards, there's really only one opportunity every year to make sure they're meeting those minimum standards.
They would be subject to an inspection.
right.
It doesn't mean we would.
But you could only
So
inspect when they're
are they included
operational.
in the 20% of inspections that are required to be made?
I believe they would. Yeah, they would be subject to inspections.
I'm not sure if the
They have to
inspections
let
are
us know
just
when
for
they're gonna be having these
hospitals.
clinics then?
Yeah, see,
20% of
For all
what?
locations.
Registered premises?
So they would be registered, just not paying the fee.
but, see, I don't,
I mean, they'd be subject to inspection, yes, but if we have no idea when
you
they're
can't
happening,
inspect, yeah.
unless they
It
tell
makes it
us,
challenging.
it's challenging.
And especially inspections are supposed to be unannounced,
Not that I
right?
want to make it onerous, I'm just
I don't
just
think it's
thinking out
really
loud.
not any different than a mobile practice, because you never know where they're going to be. So you have to contact, they have contact information on their registration, so you can figure
20%
out
of
where they're going to
veterinary
be.
premises annually. So it would fall in that.
Yeah, 4809.7 refers to veterinary premises in general. It's not limited to fixed facilities or hospitals, so these low-cost vaccination or no-cost vaccination and immunization location events would be subject to inspection.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, they should.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. You want to call for the vote?
Yes. Ms. Bowler.
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury is absent. Ms. Laredo.
Yes.
Ms. Mancuso.
Yes.
Dr. Noland. Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
Ms. Yanis.
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we're going to move ahead to agenda item number 17. Since you just discussed compounding, we thought we'd have Val give us a little update on the USP, the U.S. Pharmacopoeia. At least that's the way I pronounce it. How do you pronounce it, Dr. Nunez?
I don't even try.
You try?
So the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, the USP, has been busy this year writing guidances for both sterile and non-sterile compounding, and the regulations that you just were looking at were developed from meetings between, I believe, Dr. Klingberg, Dr. Sullivan, Anne Marie, and Jenny Harold over at the Pharmacy Board, and really relate to simple compounding, which is what veterinarians need to do on a regular basis. Unfortunately, the USP 795, which came out earlier this year on non-sterile compounding, kind of undoes a lot of that because they changed from categorizing compounding as simple, moderate, and complex. They removed all of those categories, which is what that regulation was based on. So we've been working a lot on this, and the VMB actually wrote a letter on USP 795 after we wrote our letter and made it available, and you all have copies of that letter. So after that all happened, then they came out with a new proposed revision of USP 797, which is on sterile compounding. And I'm not going to reiterate everything in that letter. If you read it, you can see how important it is for veterinarians to be able to do very simple types of sterile compounding, which is all that we've asked the USP for. Unfortunately, they write these guidances for compounding pharmacies, and they really don't realize that it applies to veterinarians and how important that is. And we have actually, along with the AVMA, had direct discussions with the USP group that is working on this. And when we saw 797, we got very concerned. So I made our letter available. I just sent it to them last week, and the deadline for letters to go in is the end of November. So if you would like to write a letter, you will need to get it in by November 30th. I made a copy of what they're going to consider both 795 and 797 through December 3rd, let's see. This is the public comment period, I should clarify, ends on November 30th for 797. They're going to be looking at this. Their intended publication date on both 795 and 797 is June 1st, 2019. So we don't have a lot of time to continue to try and convince them that these need to be looked at. If they want to, do their proposed guidances for compounding pharmacies, we are more than willing to work with them for potentially separate guidances for veterinarians. We don't know if they're willing to do that. The problem with the USP guidances is that they don't have, they're not a regulatory agency, but both OSHA and FDA look to these guidances as their models. So we think that that could very potentially affect veterinary medicine if nothing is done about it. So as I say, you have the 797 letter. If you just looked at that acepromazine example as the one thing, if you read nothing else, you see how important it is that this somehow we get through to them. So the letters are very important. I believe the AVMA is writing another letter. They wrote one for 795. So I'm just encouraging you to, I know it's short notice, but by the end of November to put something together and let them know that we have a lot of concerns. Thank you.
So do you think we should direct staff to write a letter, another letter? Yes.
I would like to make a motion.
Yes.
I would like to move to direct staff to draft a letter following the guidelines that have been graciously provided us by the CVMA, and get it postmarked in time for the period of review or of open comment.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any other discussion from the board? Any other public comment?
I don't think we have a copy of that, right? That letter right there, that's,
It's up online.
oh, it's
over there. I was-
yeah, looking,
So, yeah, so, yeah.
Okay, call for the vote?
Ms. Bowler?
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury is absent. Ms. Laredo?
yes.
Ms. Mancuso?
Yes.
Dr. Noland?
Yes.
Dr. Nunez?
Yes.
Ms. Yanis?
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 16, the Administrative Procedure Manual. Let's see if we can get through this. How do you want to do this?
So Ethan, if you don't mind, I'll turn it over to you for a quick introduction, and then we can go over the changes.
So, yeah, this is an item that's been kicking around for a while. It's gotten delayed at the board. but some of the changes have been previously recommended by council and staff, and those are outlined in the admin procedures manual and before you in the comments.
I do have a couple recommended changes in addition to what's provided. At the last meeting, we had discussed about webcasts and audio recordings and using that as a form of our minutes and condensing the actual minutes that are being provided with links to the audio and to the webcast. And so at that meeting, Dr. Miller pointed out graciously on page 7, on the bottom, it spoke about being erased or destroyed 30 days after the recording. I think that should be struck. I think we
They
should.
should be there forever.
I think we should maintain that. And then another portion that I did not see, so I apologize if I have missed it, but there's nothing in here in regards to board member participation or attendance during petition hearings. And I think it would be good to include in this administrative procedure manual the board's policy on having someone participate via teleconference during a petition hearing and deliberation in closed session on that petition hearing. Tara might be able to add more to this, but I do believe that there is case law that outlines significant concerns to having board members participate in petitions via teleconference because so much is missed through nonverbal communication when you're looking at a petition. So perhaps Tara can add.
I would add that if a member is participating in a separate location, they may not be able to receive exhibits provided by the petitioner and the Attorney General's office that are typically provided to the members for consideration on site. So at the time of the petition hearing, so the board staff would not have those exhibits in advance to provide to members who are participating remotely. And that's a due process problem because if you're going to be deliberating on the petition itself in closed session, you must have first-person access to the exhibits.
Where would that go?
Yeah, so
In this document?
can we just kind of go like page
Or
by-
are we going to go page by page? Yeah.
Let's go page by page.
Okay.
Anybody have anything on page 5? You okay with that?
I've got a comment here that I'm recommending deleting all of the attachments. There's only 2 of them. Starting on at the bottom of page 4, this is the table of contents. Attachments, order granting 10-day stay of execution and order fixing time for submission of written argument. These are board procedures not necessary for member review inside of the administrative manual. These are standard language, so I would say that these
Strike
2
those.
attachments are unnecessary.
Okay, we'll strike those. Page 6.
Since this is where we're talking about board member attendance at board meetings and board member participation, perhaps this is a good place to put in a policy about member participation via teleconference during petition hearings, and if the board does not want to permit that.
I would say not to permit it. This is my first time teleconferencing, and I've been there for many petition hearings, and I think it would be like putting a blindfold on you. I think body language, seeing the person, getting the exhibits, I think it should be mandatory to be there for it. Now that I've done both. I've never teleconferenced before, so, doing both, I would vote to make it in person.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
agree. I agree totally for due process.
That's great input, Judy.
So we can either ask Tara to come up with that on the fly, or we could just delegate that authority for me to work with Tara to, because we understand the intent is to not allow teleconference participation in petitions.
So should we kind of just do our agreement on each of these points and then make a motion at the end like we have been?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do that. So are we in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay. Page
Yes,
7.
that doesn't include like the cases we did yesterday, though. That was fine for teleconference. This is just when people come before us, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, page 7. So there is one thing that's been, Dr. Sullivan asked us to look at. Now that he's not here, we can decide if we want to look at it. And that's under quorum, and that's the end of the quorum paragraph. When 6 or more members of the board are present at a meeting duly held, the concurrence of 5 members is necessary to constitute an act or decision of the board. And Tara had a theory on
Why
how
was
that might have evolved that way.
6 or more.
The board is usually 8 members.
I suspect this might be a requirement because the board is made up of 5 licensees and 3 public members. So if you're only required
That's for an act.
to have 5 votes when there's 6 members present, potentially you're overriding, if they're all licensees, it may be a problem. Or argued that the members, the licensee members are
Overriding the,
absolutely overriding
Overriding
the
public
public members' votes.
So that's why it's a little kind of super.
I'm suggesting that might be why. I don't know the historical reason for putting this in there, but I could see the benefit of maintaining it because,
It's a rather clever guess.
thank you. Well, I'm always thinking North Carolina.
Logistically, I think the concern, and I could be wrong, but from Dr. Sullivan, is if you only have 5 members present, then, and they don't agree, then nothing's going to get,
no, if you only have 5 members present, then it takes the
Then you
majority.
need only 3 to take an
But if you
action.
have
Sorry,
6
yes.
members present,
Yeah.
yes, you need 5,
right, thank
Right.
you.
yes.
So to me, that almost negates Tara's argument because
It does.
Yeah.
if you only need 3 out of 5, you could have all 3 public, or you could have all 3 licensed
If you've only got 5.
members. If you only have 5, you could have a majority either way.
Yeah, I'm not sure why.
Well, so this was to consider this comment DA3 question out of October 17th. So I think we don't do it, we leave it out and we move on. If that's
Wait.
something brand new. Just a thought.
That's existing
That's
administrative
existing.
It's
manual.
existing, Judy.
So
Oh, it is existing?
Yeah,
Well,
we're-
then we just leave it and move on, yeah.
you want to leave it in?
Well, I don't know.
So I can tell you one thing that we've experienced with trying to process mail votes on disciplinary matters is sometimes when board staff is not getting timely responses from members. If there's only 6 members providing their vote by mail, we have to have at least 5 members voting in the same way for any action to be taken on that proposed decision, which is difficult because with proposed decisions, we have a deadline with which the board has to respond. And if the board doesn't take any action because there's only 6 members participating in the vote and we don't have at least 5 members voting in the same way, that's technically no action taken by the board.
Jennifer? Yeah, I'm not.
Sorry, I actually remember a couple of years ago in a meeting, we had a quorum, but I think we had 6 people, and we had a majority vote and passed something, and we had to go back at another meeting and re-vote on it because we didn't have 5 members, and if I remember correctly.
Because we
that's-
passed it with 4 of 6 or
Yeah,
something
we didn't
rather than
have the
5 of
five.
6, which I don't understand why it would require 5 of 6, or why there's probably
I
was a
could
good
understand
reason.
5 of 7
It
or
was
5
like
of
both
8,
members.
right? But 5 of 6 seems,
What do other boards do?
Yeah, that are this size.
This is the first I've seen of something like this. Typically, it's the majority of the quorum that's present. So you have the quorum, which is set in statute, you have the majority of the quorum, and that's the deciding vote.
I always thought that's how it was. Yeah, this is strange.
could we change it to say, majority or?
So that's our decision
could
to
just-
keep it the same or change it to
Or you could strike
a
it.
majority.
If you strike it, it reverts to a majority.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would do then.
What does everybody think?
Strike it.
Strike it too. I'm wondering if you have to. So the way it's written, it says at a meeting with a quorum of 5 members present, then it requires 3 members to take action. And then it goes on to say if there's 6 or more present. I wonder if, I'm just trying to,
Is that to encourage members to come and vote?
Maybe that was it.
be,
Ethan, do you remember any history on this at all?
No, I'm sorry, I do not.
I'm sure there was something that happened that spurred it, but
yeah.
we don't.
Well, in the early days, there used to be a problem with a quorum when it was like Tom, Linda, me, and, I can't remember the
Okay,
other
so,
names
yeah.
anymore.
So what's, Lana and Judy, what are your feelings? Keep it or strike it?
I don't know, I'm not really sure. Yeah, it's weird. It's always been there and never caused us any trouble besides what Jennifer said. But if it is for mail votes, then that is a problem, and it seems like we should strike it. And if other boards don't do it this way, and none of us can remember any history to justify it, then yeah, I guess we should strike it.
Does it need to stipulate that, just all actions, all actions and decisions of the board must be made by a majority of those present and voting?
I think that's already an existing law. I think that's why this was so confusing, because this goes above and beyond what's
Okay.
existing. I mean,
So it already is, okay.
It doesn't seem sensible that you can have a simple majority with one number of more board members present, and then you have to have a super majority with another number of members. I don't know.
Is there a motion?
I would move that we strike
Actually,
that.
super
I,
majority.
I
5 of
thought that
6.
we were going to go through it and then take a final
Oh, that's
motion
right,
at the
true.
end.
Okay, so, not a motion. Do we have
Well,
an
so-
agreement?
Just a consensus.
Is there,
I would
what's our,
strike.
I'm actually for keeping it.
we're keeping it? I can go either way. There's an argument
Yeah,
either way.
But
Can you tell us why?
When I think of 5, I think that there's 8 members on the board, and a majority is 5.
Yeah.
That's 50 plus 1, yeah.
So in other words, we should all come to the meetings and vote, because
There
we
you
really, because we all bring something to the table that's important, and we need a majority of our members, which means then we should all make sure we get our mail votes in on time and do them
Everybody
all.
needs to
That's
do
the
their mail
key.
votes.
The mail vote.
It's the mail votes. it's the
We will be
issues.
publicly reprimanded if we do not.
Although it's interesting that this is in here, it's just
What we
weird.
could do is have a rule that if you don't do your mail vote, then you'll be outed at the next meeting. Okay?
really do think this is from 10 years ago when we had problems having a quorum. And I think leaving it in is fine because it is the majority of the board.
So I was at a meeting a couple years ago where this was a huge problem, and it didn't make any sense to anybody, and someone said, well, if one board member just left the room, then it would only take 3. So it really is not a good, that doesn't make any sense, why you would have 3 out of 5 and 5 out of 6. And truthfully, somebody could leave, and then you'd only need 3. So everybody thought it was a bad idea.
Yeah. That is a great point.
Yeah, it is, it's goofy.
All right, Dr. Nunez, can you leave the room, please, so we can vote?
Dr. Nunez, don't make us out you about the mail vote.
Because I think she just did.
So do we have a motion? Anyone?
What was it? Was Val pro or against striking it? I didn't understand.
She's for
So
striking.
what she did was told us of an incident where you could have one person leave the room and then all of a sudden the vote could go from 5 have to approve to 3 with one person leaving the room. Didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not gonna make motions, but which way do we agree? Are we gonna
I still
agree?
think we should strike it.
Okay, we agree on striking?
I strike.
I
I mean,
can-
I'm
can go
in,
either
if
way.
we're talking about, but I'll go with whatever, the majority or the supermajority.
Are you holding firm?
Fine, we'll strike it.
Thank you, Dr. Nunez.
Okay, anything else on 7?
And there's 7 members here, so even if I did leave the room, that would be 6 members.
Did we decide, what did we decide about are we striking the 30 days, the erased or
Okay,
destroyed
yes.
30 days? Can we do that before we move on?
It's struck, right?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Get rid
It's
of
struck,
that.
yeah.
okay, thank you.
Anything on 8? On page 9, in the middle of the page, okay, let me read it again here. For board-specified work, that paragraph, board members are compensated for actual time spent performing work. And I think, tell me if I'm correct, that at the current time, board members are compensated just for days we spend at meetings.
For the most part, yes. But if the president or vice president were to attend a meeting, for example, or another member were to attend a Board of Governors meeting on behalf of the board, or AABSB on behalf of the board, or have a meeting with me, or go to the legislature, that would be considered board business and could get a per diem for that as well.
Okay. But if we spend a day reading all our material, we're not getting paid for doing that, for doing the case review activities. And that's fine, I just want to make sure it's all clear. Because I don't know if we should put in here case review activities.
Where does it say?
So-
Third paragraph.
Yeah, third paragraph down. Paragraph starts for board-specified work.
It says that work includes but is not limited to authorized attendance or gatherings, events, meetings, hearings, or conferences, or policy and case review activities. So it is including it.
I know, but I think,
Keep reading. It's the last sentence. Compensation for preparatory time is paid when 8 hours are accrued.
So
Yes.
so that would be on the members to accrue up to 8 hours, submit that to us, and then we would give you the per diem.
Wow.
yeah, so
Can we
what's,
go back in time and get all
Retroactive
that?
pay.
yeah, so that's why I'm bringing it up, because I'm okay with not having that. when I first came on the
We've never
board,
done it.
I know some members did.
Some members did, yeah.
So if you would like to not have that, I recommend that you do strike it.
Yeah, that's just totally wrong. I mean, I've been reading these cases and getting ready for meetings all these years. I've never
Everyone
charged
does.
the board for it,
Yeah.
and to think others
No, I-
were getting paid for it isn't right.
Yeah.
No, it's
it's-
part of
I
our
don't think any of the
duties.
veterinarians were, put it this way, Judy.
Judy,
I
you
don't think
you don't
anybody
prepare for
was.
meetings, Judy.
You better watch it.
Yeah, she can reach out from the
Okay.
ceiling.
So we'll strike that
That, just that,
last sentence and the last part of the sentence before that.
oh yeah,
That's
the
two.
timesheet.
So we'll strike or policy and case review, I'm gonna say I crossed it, I can't read it, or case review, and then the last sentence.
Compensation for preparatory
Yes,
time.
strike that.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, not the whole,
but that,
Is-
striking from that work includes?
no,
Oh,
that work includes, so it's in the period after conferences.
oh, preparatory time, I
So,
gotcha.
striking it, I think is good. However, that's still not preventing it, and because it's includes but is not limited to. So if the goal is to prevent it, I think it should state that.
Board members are not compensated for.
Because, yeah, there's board member turnover and interpretation changes with each board member, and arguments ensue. And if the intent of the board is to prevent it, I think it should clearly state that it does not include case review and prep for meetings.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm okay with that. Is everybody okay with that?
yes.
Yes,
So the first sentence ends with
Box of
conferences?
material?
The first sentence ends with conferences?
So I think that other sentence would end with conferences,
And then the
yes.
next sentence says, compensation for preparatory time, well, actually,
That's struck too, compensation.
Board
for
members
prep
will
time
not
is
be
struck.
do
compensated.
you have to add a sentence saying that preparation and case review is not included?
Yeah. So Jessica, so you're saying then that,
So instead of, again, putting Tara on the spot to wordsmith it, if we have a general consensus that the intent is to prevent members from receiving compensation for case review and board meeting prep, I think that we can understand that and take it back and work with it.
Okay. I
Is
have
that the
another-
consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question for the bottom of page 9.
Okay, can we stay on this one quickly? So what you've agreed to, I was looking up Code Section 103, compensation and reimbursement for expenses. I just wanted to make sure that the changes you're making here are consistent with the statutory authorization for compensation. It is silent on whether or not members are paid for preparatory time. That's why I wasn't paying attention. My question is, in that second sentence, that work includes but is not limited to authorized attendance at other gatherings, events, meetings, hearings, or conferences. Should we strike but is intended, but is not limited to? It sounds like you want to pay compensation for attendance only, not preparation. So, do you think that we need to strike but is not limited to make sure that preparatory time for attendance at other gatherings, events, meetings, hearings, or conferences is solely
okay.
That's what Jessica was saying.
limited, right? So, all right, so we're striking but it's not limited to, so it's solely limited to attendance.
Then maybe you don't have to say the other about not compensated for pre-prep time and things like that, right?
I
'Cause it's
think,
covered.
well, it is saying what it includes, but I think to be clear, if the intent is to prevent it, it should explicitly state that.
Fine with me. Oh,
Okay.
The alternative is, under 103, it says, each such member shall receive a per diem of $100 for each day actually spent in the discharge of official duties and shall be reimbursed for traveling and other expenses necessarily incurred, et cetera. So, actually spent in the discharge of official duties.
That could be interpreted to
That-
be prep time.
And day is not defined either, so I've also had them interpret that to be for 15 minutes, that there's some boards who do a per diem for a 15-minute activity.
Really?
Actually, there's 15 seconds.
That's money well spent
Okay, we're getting punchy. Okay. Okay, Dr. Nunez, are we done with that one?
What? Oh, thank you. Ethan was pointing out that if we are removing the compensate, we can strike that paragraph.
Can we, or does it need to be, because maybe you're obviously, when we're at a veterinary medical board meeting, but do we need, like, if we go to a Board of Governors meeting, or we go to AVSB, do we need to
Yeah.
submit anything for that?
So currently, the process is, there's a god-awful form that we have to fill out each month for per diems. And typically, we know who's participating by we. I mean, I
Okay.
will let staff know what board members have participated.
So you're kind of doing that so we don't have to.
Right.
Okay.
However, I do want to put a caveat to that because there was talk prior to the new executive team coming on about HR requiring a new form for per diems, and they were looking at the disclosure of not receiving state funds if they are a state employee. So for example, if they are a state employee but a board member and they claimed vacation, they should not be claiming per diem because they're already being paid by the state. So there was talk about HR, and I don't know if Patrick knows anything about. So there was talk from DCA HR, the head of HR, about this form that they were developing that would be required. So currently it's not, but that could come out. Not sure if that helps, but.
Not really, but. Okay, so should we, that one sentence, so we should leave that in or take that out?
I think we could take it out, and then if they ever come up with that form, then we can add it in.
Okay. And to the bottom of page 9, what was?
What does it mean to be censored? A board member may be censored. What does that mean? I mean, it looks like you've behaved in an inappropriate manner. Then there's a hearing, and then at the hearing, it's determined whether or not you're censored. What does that mean to be censored?
It's. We'll see if the Practice Act says in there. Tara's looking it up.
Well, it says it's a board policy, and my assumption is that's not in statute.
Does that mean that
it
would
was-
that mean that things that you said would be erased from the record?
I'm Googling.
Okay.
The
Well, then,
official,
while you're Googling that, the other question I have is removal of board members. Does that mean only government-appointed members can be removed? Assembly-appointed members cannot be removed?
I had that question too. Is that just governor appointees that can be removed, or is it? It's all
just
all
says-
the above?
The governor may remove officers who he appointed, appointed by him or her.
I wonder if that's from maybe the day when the governor was the only appointer of boards
Yeah.
prior to the legislative input. Thank you, censure.
Okay.
So I think Tara and I can wordsmith that to address that, to make it more clear.
Okay.
Express severe disapproval. Can I
A
motion
sense-
to censor Judy? She's not
You're
there.
racking up the points, Nunez.
But then actually on this, shouldn't we look at the, business BMP code sections 106 and 106.5 that it's referring to before we think about tinkering anything? With anything?
Okay, so censure, it's a verb or a noun. The verb form of it is express severe disapproval, typically in a formal statement. And the noun version of censure is the expression of formal disapproval. So it sounds like an admonishment.
Okay. So what about this issue about removal of board members that are not appointed by the governor?
I bet that has to do with what Kathy said before the legislature, the Senate, and the Assembly started appointing. Maybe
Originally, it
it's
was just
just
governor
old.
appointees.
And there's some boards, I think, and commissions that are fully appointed by, I don't know if they're in DCA, but that the governor appoints all of them, but.
Yeah, commissions, it's all governor and there isn't any Senate or Assembly.
Yeah,
Add to it if we need.
so that may be why.
Well, the senator or assembly should have the authority to remove a member.
I've got to look it up on here.
So I think that needs to be added.
So
It
you
might
guys
be
will
applied
investigate that?
somewhere else where they're given the
Okay, so should we
authority.
can move on?
I would recommend keeping the language as is, and if we, upon researching these two code sections, find a problem or an inconsistency, then we'll bring that issue back to the board for review.
Okay. Is everybody in agreement on that?
Will you let us know even if you don't? Because I want to make sure this issue is not forgotten.
So
Yes,
Tara, I love you. But I think the intent of the board is to just make it clear that if the same type of removal is available for the Assembly or the Senate, then it is just wanted to be put in there. And so I don't know if we need to bring that back to the board. I know you guys love reviewing this document, but if that's the intent, I think that we can do that.
Yeah, just do that and let's move on.
Okay, page 10.
The first one up is elections, and I have a lot to say on this one. Are you guys ready?
So I have a question about elections. Let me go first, Jenny, because mine's real short. That the election should occur at the fall meeting with new officers assuming office at the next regularly scheduled board meeting, but not in the same calendar year. Okay, now I just read it differently. Okay. I was just going to say that there was one year we forgot to have elections at the fall meeting, and so we had an election in January. So then the next president took office in the following
June.
the following meeting, but it was in the same calendar year.
Yeah, it was, but we probably just
Yeah.
made an exemption.
So, yeah, we just forgot. Emery forgot, and we all forgot. And so can we strike not the same calendar year
You can just say at the
at the next meeting?
next meeting.
Yes.
Full meeting of the board, regardless of when that is.
It also says that board officers should be prepared to serve first as vice president and then president, which means Jamie could not be president in that case. And then I want to add, let's talk about that, and then I want to talk about more.
Okay, so let's stick to the first issue that I brought up about not necessarily in the same calendar year.
Well, I think it should be. I think that it was wrong of us to miss it. I don't think we change it. I think we should just follow it, and it should be on the executive officer to make sure it doesn't get skipped.
That's always the goal, but, it did happen once.
But I still think you can accomplish it by just
saying,
stipulating at the next regularly
Yes.
scheduled meeting of the
Well-
board.
And in-
Typically, that is the next year.
And in this instance, our vice president is not available to be president.
yes. Okay, so Jessica,
And it does say, that paragraph starts off with May, and it says elections are usually scheduled. And I don't think that it's a shall. And I think if something comes up logistically, or it is forgotten, or we have more pressing matters, I don't think it's a complete requirement that we are on it.
yes. So, and I think the new president should take office at the next regularly scheduled board meeting, and I think we should strike, but not in the same calendar year.
I would agree. I think that is in keeping with the intent here, because what I'm seeing is a change from elections are usually scheduled for October, and we're changing that to fall. And before it was you'd elect in October and the next meeting would be January.
Right.
But now, if it's just in the fall could be a September meeting and the next meeting could be December in the same year. So I think the purpose was to begin the new appointment the next year, but in those situations where the election doesn't occur until January
Yeah.
and you're going to seat the new officers at the next meeting, that's the same year. So I don't think this is necessary. You know, I've seen other boards, their administrative manuals make it where the election occurs in the fall and the new officers are seated January of the following year.
Which is what this did say.
It may be a little too specific with October and January, but I don't think, but not in the same year, calendar year, is unnecessarily restrictive.
Okay, we all in agreement on that point? Judy and Alana, you're okay with that?
Yes,
Okay,
as long as it's a year that I think it was regimented before so that they would always serve October to October, or January to January. So as long as it doesn't creep around and all of a sudden they're serving 8 months or 14 or 16 months, it was one term. And I think that that's why it was determined
Yes.
a month and
Yeah.
a time.
So it says a
this
term
has
of
been
1
very
year.
ceremonial.
yes, it says a term of 1 year, and I'm sure Jessica will not forget.
Don't
Then
jinx
you could
me.
leave it as October if you felt that way.
I just think mandating in October is not
Yes.
practical.
Because we may have meetings
If
again in November.
Location issues and things like that, it may be
Yeah.
a November meeting.
I mean,
or
that's
September.
fine as long as it's one term.
Yes. Okay, any other comments on this paragraph?
Yeah, so let's address the next part. Board officers should be,
Where is this?
which is weird language, prepared to serve first as vice president and then as president. If the board feels that way, then it should be shall be, right? And I think that we gotta put in here, because I feel that there has been discrimination against the public members. I have been personally told by veterinarians, well, public members, shouldn't be president. When Linda Starr was a president, before the board, like 2010-ish, when there was that transition, the old board and the boards before them, because this is the institutional knowledge that was passed down to me, would pass the hat. They gave everyone on the board the opportunity to be vice president and president so that they could have that experience. It wasn't a power grab. It wasn't about keeping control. Everyone is equal on our board. They are all appointed, whether you're an RVT, a public member, or veterinarian. And all of a sudden, that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. And it's no, vets can only be president and vice president and public members aren't worthy.
I don't think anyone on this board has ever said that, Judy.
Well,
I don't,
actually,
and I
I've
certainly don't
heard
think that.
Similar things. Well, I've heard stuff directly, and I'm not gonna sit here and name names. So I think this paragraph needs to say, all board members, public, RVT, veterinarians, shall be, officers. And I think the passing the hat was the right thing to do. At-large cities with city councils just pass the baton and one person is mayor after the other. It's not this control freak thing of, who wants to stay president and vice president forever and just going bouncing back and forth. It's not okay. And I think everyone should equally have the experience. We are equal, and there should not be any hierarchy of members.
I totally agree, there's no hierarchy and all the members are equal.
But it's not true. It's not true.
So,
So,
Language
Jessica,
here, oh, go ahead, Jessica.
no,
I actually, and please feel free to disagree, but I actually think that that sentence should be struck. I do think that I see the benefit to requiring them to be vice president and then president, but I think that that's just another criteria that this entire board should consider when doing elections. I think the board, when doing elections, should take into account the best fit for the board to move the whole board forward for consumer protection. And putting this statement in there might not be the best as far as requiring vice president, then president. You could have a challenging vice president. You could have a vice president who is removed from the board. I think that vice president and president is essential. I think that they have to work together to move the board forward, and there could be all sorts of reasons why that's not a great idea to set a policy that they are vice president and then move to president because the policy says so. So I would recommend striking that sentence.
Well, and the whole thought that Cheryl has to be vice president for continuity because Jamie's new getting on as president, I think that's just
Okay.
not right.
okay, so we're past that, Jennifer has a comment.
Sorry, I don't know how helpful this is, but when I was first appointed in 2014, I replaced the vice president, and our president at the time unexpectedly became ill and passed away in
Right.
January. So we essentially had to elect two new members to lead the board. Do we have some sort of a contingency plan for that? Because had we not had the October meeting when I was first appointed, we would have, and say Dr. Kendall had passed away before the January meeting, we would have had no president or vice president.
So I think still striking that sentence helps that situation. And I
Yeah.
think the normal course of events would just to have elections at the next meeting.
I would be in favor of striking the sentence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was
Agreed,
just there
yeah.
because somebody thought having somebody serve vice president, move up to president was continuity, et cetera, but it does, especially in an 8-member board.
And I think it needs to say something that all board members are equal and none of
Well, I
the,
think-
public members aren't as good as the industry people. It's not right.
I think it does say that. It says board shall elect from its members a president. It doesn't say board shall elect from only the licensed members. It says the board shall elect from its members.
Yeah, well, we're having a problem with that.
I don't have a problem with a public member being president. I don't have a problem with an RVT being president. I would like the best person to be president is my only thoughts.
So are we okay with striking those two sections?
So we're striking the words in the normal course of events, that sentence, right? And then,
And then the other one
No,
is the.
but not in the same calendar year.
Yes, and then striking not in the same calendar year.
Okay.
So are we in agreement with the way that paragraph reads now?
Judy and Alana?
Yeah, I'm okay with striking those. I'm not sure what it'll look like. I don't know that it ensures equality. And I think the old board had the right idea of passing the hat.
Tara, do you have any comments?
I do not. Unfortunately, this isn't really a legal
It's-
question.
yeah,
It's
okay,
just
but I
board
mean on the whole page.
policy.
Do you have any other comments on the whole page?
I've looked at other boards as well.
I have no other comments on this page.
Okay. Page 11? Or should we move on?
No, I have one more, page 10.
Okay,
It
what's your
says
page 10?
Officer vacancies. Is someone else talking? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Judy.
Where it says officer vacancies, if the office of the president becomes vacant, the vice president assumes the office of the president and the board holds an election for vice president at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. What if the vice president is taken out? If this didn't happen with Dick at this particular meeting, we wouldn't have it addressed. So we need another sentence for what happens if it's not the president, but the vice president all of a sudden is removed.
Then we would say at the next regularly scheduled board meeting, then we would elect both the president and vice president?
And in
Or
those,
just the vice president, because the president is still within their term, right? And the vice president gets removed by the governor halfway through their term, then I think it should just be that they're, an election for that vice president position.
I think that is an option, and logistically, I don't see this, if it happens, say, if right after a board meeting, I don't see it as something where we have to wait for the next quarterly board meeting. I think this would be a good opportunity to have a teleconference and have a quick election to make sure that we do have that position filled. I don't see this as someone filling that position for an extended period of time prior to having the election.
this is Kathy. Question, I'm glad you brought this up, Judy, now that I'm reading it. So technically, if the office of president becomes vacant for any reason, obviously in the short term, the vice president would step up, and then there would be a subsequent election either by teleconference or whatever. But the question maybe is the election for a new president. It could be the vice president that assumes that role, and then you have a election for our vice president as well. But it's not a mandatory. This one says there's an election for a vice president at the next meeting, the way it's written.
So we could just,
Unless I'm missing something.
we could just strike vice president and just have an election at the next regularly scheduled meeting. So for any vacancies of the officers.
I'll just bring that up because
That makes sense.
So that looks like, if we keep the first part of that sentence, the vice president becomes the president, and then we hold a new election at the next meeting. So the term vice president moving to president would just be replaced by a new vote at the next meeting. I think that might be a better idea to communicate the idea. Alana and Judy, Kathy said that perhaps it would be an interim president, and I think that is a better way of capturing a temporary slot for the vice president moving to the position of president. It would be an interim president situation, and then at the next meeting, both positions could be up for vote for election.
So then it would read, the vice president assumes the office of the interim president?
But wouldn't the interim?
As the interim
fulfill
president.
the rest of the
Yeah,
term?
it's almost like you have to confirm the president
No,
at the next meeting.
no, I think it would, after you have elections, then it would, well, I guess it would.
Right, that's
It
the
would go through
thing.
the term.
If you hold an election for both positions, then they're not serving the rest of the term. If you're only holding an election for vice president, the vice president who is now serving as the president gets to serve the rest of that term. So do you want, members, do you want to allow the vice president to assume the position of president and through the end of that term? Or do you want the vice president to become the interim president until the next board meeting when both positions could be up for election?
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think that.
I vote for that one.
I would say go for the rest of the term.
It still doesn't answer
the Nope.
question if something happens to the vice president unless we change the first part of the sentence.
And I just think if we took the fact out that should be prepared to serve versus vice president, then elevate to president or whatever the terminology was earlier, then this allows for the board to consider the full picture if the president, for some reason, is, that they've just elected, or
But if we lose a vice president, we still need to.
we still need an
So
election
if
for
we could
another
say,
vice president.
if one of the officer positions becomes vacant,
Yeah, so we definitely have to, either officer position will
Either
require
officer,
another
yeah.
election,
seems like we have to.
right?
I like the idea of kind of relooking at the whole picture as well. So if you said something about if, either of the officer positions became vacant, the board will hold new elections at the next regularly scheduled board meeting.
So say that was in July, but then we have to hold elections again
Oh,
in
yeah.
And can we
in
also take out the
the
term?
fall.
Can we actually strike the term regularly? That's, could be the quarterly meeting, and I
Yeah.
think that we should have one sooner.
Yeah. That's why I think that it should, the vice president goes to president, they fill out the rest of the term, then we have our regularly scheduled election in the fall.
But we still need to replace the vice
And then
president.
yes, and then we have election for the vice president.
Makes more sense, I don't know.
So that suggestion is maintaining the existing provision as modified to strike regularly from the sentence.
Propose something completely different than
That
what I
doesn't
agreed to.
address-
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can go either way, I don't care.
Good, then go with us.
I'm just saying, because we have to have an election again in the fall. We have to have elections in the fall.
Yes, unless there's an exception, unless there's a vacancy, and then you can have elections in between. I'm just.
So, but we still have to have elections in the fall,
But,
right?
but it's quite possible that the vice president doesn't want to become the president, and they want to stay the vice president, and then we need to not have an automatic,
Right.
That's what I
So-
kind of agree with, just
Yeah.
looking at the whole.
Yeah.
But for
I can go
the
either way.
immediate, for immediately, certainly the vice president, if it's absence of the president, that does become interim
I-
for the short term. And
I think that should be the understanding of the person taking on that role as vice president, as it is with any structure where you have vice president, president. If you are assuming that office as vice president, the assumption is if the president's not able to be there for any reason, the vice president has to be willing to step up and serve as interim president. So I think that that person taking that on should have the understanding that that's a possibility.
they should, yeah.
Who's our Speaker of the House? Is it our executive officer?
Nancy Pelosi.
Okay, so what's our consensus?
Yeah, how are we?
Consensus is I need to use my inhaler again.
It is bad. The consensus is
air,
to,
huh?
if,
Terrible.
That's all
It's
coffee.
just, be glad you're not here. It's like
It's
there's a
terrible in
fire
this
outside the
room.
building, if
if the,
it smells like.
if the president is unable to serve, then the vice president becomes president until the next quarterly meeting where both officers,
Next.
offices will be elected, president and vice president. If the vice president becomes unavailable, then a vice president gets elected at the next quarterly meeting,
How about next scheduled
scheduled meeting.
meeting, because we might do a teleconference.
Yeah.
That's our consensus.
That sounds good. The next
Okay,
scheduled
I'm okay
meeting.
with that.
So are we going to, in that second line, where it says president assumes the office, it's vice president assumes the office, can we strike of and insert as the interim?
Yes.
Strike of the, so it's assumes the office as the interim president.
And then it's also assumed that regular elections always occur in the fall.
Yeah, but does that need
I think that the election of officers, when it, in that paragraph where it does say that elections are usually scheduled for the fall, I think that that's there. But in the case of that you have vacancies mid-session, I think it's clear that you would then have elections at the next scheduled board meeting, whenever that may be.
Is it nice,
Yeah.
permissive?
And if it becomes urgent, you schedule a teleconference.
Right.
Anything else on page 10?
We are so not close to being done. That's a big policy.
Page 11? Under training, should we specify all the trainings, the ethics training,
Drivers.
sexual harassment,
The-
drivers, board members?
Driver's defensive drivers.
So no, we can't dispense of that requirement. I would recommend not listing specifics because they change.
They change,
uh,
okay.
Unless you want to look at this every time it changes. I think that it's just an understanding that all required training.
And there's 3 of them right now, correct?
4,
There's 4?
board member orientation training.
Oh, board
Sexual
member.
harassment.
Yeah.
Sexual
Prevention.
harassment, ethics, drivers.
Sexual harassment prevention
Mark
training.
doesn't take any of them. I think he should be censored.
Okay,
Can I ask just a philosophical question before we move off of page 11? There's the paragraph that talks about board administration, and it is inappropriate for board members to become involved in the details of program delivery. I'm assuming that's the day-to-day, not necessarily how this meeting goes, and is that right?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, are we done with page 11? Oh, good. Page 12 is short. Anything on page 12? Page 13? I have a question in one of the middle paragraphs where it says, "It is critical that individual board members." It goes on to say the executive officer is accountable for da-da-da-da-da. But it doesn't put budget in there. I think that's one of your main responsibilities is budget.
Yes. Considering if I go over, it comes out of my salary.
Yes,
So
I think budget should be in there.
Okay, which paragraph are you?
So it's a paragraph that starts, "It is critical individual board members." So it has her accountable for supervising, for workload issues, staff vacations, sick leave balances, labor personnel disputes, personal actions, but leaves out budget.
Budget implementation.
Just,
I think it's great for the board to hold the executive officer accountable for the budget. I think the statute that says it comes out of my salary also holds me accountable for the budget.
yeah.
Heard.
That was just Anne Marie.
Yeah, that was
She's
just
the only
her,
one that
okay.
had to go to jail.
Okay, anything else on page 13? Page 14? Oh, good. Page 15?
There's a lot of red coming up, don't worry.
Page 16?
And I have notes on it too.
Okay, I have some notes here. Let me try and figure this out.
Yeah, but not, yeah, okay. Wait, I'm still, there was something.
So at the bottom of page 16, where it says the members of the MDC hold office for a term of 3 years and shall be staggered. So one question is that, so we had just had 4 people come on. Are those 4 people, or somehow are they staggered? 'Cause if not, we need to try and figure out how to stagger them,
We did do
or else we're gonna have this big problem
I
again.
mean, 4 people.
And also, I think it should be stated in here that the 2
This year?
liaison members from the VMB, their terms are not for 3 years.
Wait, where is that one?
Their term is,
Additional. Where's the line about the 2 members of the VMB liaison?
well,
That's through the smoke.
I don't think even the board liaison is even in here, because that happened after,
Yeah, it is.
where is it?
Second from the bottom paragraph, the MDC consists of 9 members, 4 licensed veterinarians,
Oh, there we go, yeah.
2 registered techs, 1 public member, and 2 liaisons
Relates
of
to
the board.
so they did change that part, yeah.
And since there's only one registered veterinary technician on the board, so they automatically have to become the MDC rep, is that
Yes.
right? That's part of
Jennifer's very well aware of that.
Jennifer's it.
And
She really has 3 roles, yeah, she's, yeah. But the 2 liaisons don't have terms of 3 years, I think that should be stated.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, I thought it
The
was.
members of the MDC hold office for a term of 3 years and shall be staggered. Isn't that,
No, but, so like, Dr. Sullivan was the liaison to the MDC, but he's not on there anymore.
oh, so now we have to reappoint someone. Does it tell you how to do that?
That's you.
Oh, yeah,
That's you.
vacancies to non-liaison members.
That's you, for next year.
Is-
But if he had a term of 3 years, he'd still be on it. He's not, so.
Is,
So, in reading the statute that creates the MDC, BPC Section 4809.8, it provides that the committee appoints 7 members. And members appointed by the board shall serve for a term of 3 years. So for the liaisons, those are not appointed by the board, but rather the veterinary member is appointed by the board president, and the RVT is automatically, provided the default position. So I think you're correct that the non-board appointed members do not serve, it's not required that they serve for a term of 3 years. So that could be a term of 1 year or less. So if you would like to make that clarification in here, I
we
think
should be
that's helpful.
clarified, yeah.
so board liaisons are for 1-year terms? They need to be reappointed every year?
So, or they're, so should we have it in there that the board liaisons can act in that position until they're not on the board? Or do they need to be reappointed every year by the board president?
Well, that's up to you guys.
Yeah.
Tara, I have
That's,
I have a question in regards to the addition of "and shall be staggered" based on the statute that you just read. If the term is for 3 years, the term is for 3 years. And if we have members, the 4 members who are appointed, they serve 3 years, you're going to have every 3 years 4 new members coming on.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how we can stagger that if it's in statute. So perhaps the board might want to request maybe an omnibill fix to that section to allow for the staggering. Because I think that would require the statute to change for the 3-year term.
I'm confused. The statute does require the appointments to be staggered.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I-
they're,
and
But
the-
staggered for 3-year terms, right? And so my concern is you have 4 members and the statute says they have 3 years and they just appointed them at the same time.
And the only way to fix that would be to shorten some terms or
shorten
lengthen
some
some
up, to
terms.
choose
And
not
then you'd
to
have to
reappoint someone.
decide who gets shortened and who gets
Yes.
lengthened.
That
draw
might be a,
straws.
You draw straws.
a good sunset review issue. You know, when they're really
yeah.
drilling down on the statutes relative to the board, that concern, that issue, write it down on the list. In section 4809.8 subdivision B, probably needs to be clarified by the legislature to help the board stagger the appointments in a more effective way.
Yeah.
So today, that language matches the statute.
Before we move off this, I have another question, because it indicates that, I just want to clarify my understanding, because I don't think I understand fully the role of the board members on the MDC. And it mentions that the 2 liaisons of the board, a veterinarian and a registered veterinary technician. My definition of liaison is a person who helps organizations or groups to work together and provide information to each other.
But they are voting.
But they are voting members. So I think to clarify this, as a voting member of the MDC, they represent their opinions, their viewpoints, and they're allowed to have free reign as to how they want to vote. They're not constricted to vote in a way they think the board, you know, it's an opinion or a directive that the board has given them. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that's clear so I understand it.
As opposed to,
Well, as a liaison, I misunderstood. I think I thought that they actually try to communicate to the MDC the board's historical opinions, views, or what the board had been doing or talking. And so but it sounds like maybe that's a false assumption that I had.
Let's ask Jennifer her opinion.
Yeah, I was about to say, Jennifer.
Yeah, that's the thing. As the board liaison, I am a voting member, and I do get my own opinion. Now, I'm the only RVT member of the board, so I usually get my way here, too. But when I am at the MDC meetings, I am a voting member voicing my RVT opinion.
Yeah.
So I think, I really like the title liaison, but I think Jamie's right, that it's maybe not the appropriate title.
We may want to kind of, I don't know, get rid of it then.
I think at the same time, though, you still bring that historical background of the board's views and opinions. It's not necessarily stating that you are voting the way that the board had voted. You're sharing that information with the committee of what the board's discussions are. And likewise, when you come to the board, you would be sharing the MDC's discussions and rationale with the board. So to me, that's where I see liaison fitting. You're still being that liaison to sharing the information, but it's not requiring you to do the opinion of the board.
But as a vet, they could have undue influence if they're a voting member as well, and then the standing committee feels like they have to go their way because they're a board member, and it's not supposed to be that way.
I will say Dr. Sullivan and I got voted down quite a bit. We didn't seem to have any influence over the committee.
I just wanted to have the discussion so it was very clear, you know, that they are voting members and they are allowed to vote their conscience, but they are also acting as liaisons to make sure that communication both directions is augmented.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
I will say, I will add too, that we have the advantage of being board members, so when the board does assign something to the MDC, we can help with, help the chair kind of guide that issue in the direction that the board wanted.
How come you didn't do that with ambulances?
Okay, anything else on page 16?
Well, I don't think we actually addressed your question as far
Okay.
as defining term limits for the liaisons.
Oh,
Okay,
I would be in favor of appointing them every year at the president's pleasure.
It seems like the continuity of, so that they assume that they will be busy for 2 or 3 years is probably a good thing. It's already confusing enough, I think, when we bounce around, but again, either way.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and most of the things they take on take a
Take more
longer
than-
period of time. to
yeah.
actually
But I think it does give flexibility if the president decides a certain person is not being,
But say,
Well, there's,
say for,
down here, it says that the board will remove from office at any time a member of the MDC that can, for continuing neglect of any duty, conflict of interest, incompetence, or unprofessional
Yeah.
conduct.
well, what if a person gets appointed to the MDC, and later on during their term, they decide they want to run for president of the board, and they are told that you're appointed until your term is over. That means you have to be board liaison and president if you want to be president?
Could they resign as an MDC member
you'd
or
have
the
to resign.
liaison, or no, they're,
Yes, they could.
And also, do we have anything here about the officers of the board serving on the MDC? Because Dr. Sullivan was vice president and the board liaison, but he wasn't your average person. He was an overachiever, so I don't know if we have anything. He is an overachiever.
I think also one thing to keep in mind, if you do want to look at term limits for that appointee, the president officer is elected every year, and so if you put 3 years for a liaison, but then it's up to the president to appoint someone to the MDC, who overrides whom? Because does that existing appointment, did then the president not get to appoint a new one? Because the president, we decided, was going to appoint the MDC liaison for 3 years?
I
So we
don't-
could
I
leave
think-
it up to the discretion of the president?
I think you should leave it up to the discretion of the president, and they would have the ability to appoint one each year. And they could decide if they want
Well,
need that continuity.
is it important that the president not be the liaison to the MDC? Because if you had a
Because of-
vice president who was the liaison, and then they stepped into the presidency, but were willing to continue with their role in the MDC and keep things moving forward, is that a conflict of interest?
I don't see it as a conflict of interest. I just see it as a lot of work, a work overload, trying to do both.
I guess another question is, can the liaison hold an office on the MDC?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that prevents it.
We need to start answering all these questions.
I mean, at the end of the day, anything the MDC does comes
Yeah.
before the board anyway for final adjudication or approval.
I think if we have an overachiever who wants to do both, and they have the bandwidth to do so, I don't think we should prevent them.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's up to you guys. That was just my opinion.
I had just
Okay,
one.
so have we decided anything here? Okay, so are we okay with the statement that the board liaison appointments to the MDC are appointed by the president and will serve a term of 1 year, but can be reappointed by the president for as long as that person is president?
Actually, now that we talked this through, it might not be necessary because you say that it's appointed by the president,
Yeah.
and the president is a one-term office,
Yeah,
so.
so we're okay?
I
I think we're okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to clarify that the board liaison One is a de facto appointment to the MDC under the statute. That's the RVT position. And the board president only appoints one board liaison to the MDC. That's all.
Yeah. Okay, but in this last paragraph where it says the members of the MDC hold office for a term of 3 years, can we put in there, except for the board liaisons?
Well, why would? I mean,
The statute
reason for
itself.
shortening the board liaison's term, I'm sort of confused on their term on the MDC. Was it just
If
to
this was
reappoint
true,
if?
Dick Sullivan would still be there.
I think when Tara read the statute, it said that the requirements for the 3 years were the other MDC members, but it was silent on the liaisons. Was
Yeah.
that right?
Correct. The members appointed by the board
Okay.
shall serve for a term of
Okay, so
3
you
years.
think that covers this, okay. I'll shut up then. What?
I agree. I think that clarification is helpful.
So in case you guys missed that,
Once you get appointed,
Dr.
get appointed to the MDC, according to that sentence, he should still be there.
Where'd you find that? Shall serve concurrently with their terms in office of the board.
So effectively, the highlighted text means that if the board liaisons serve for the same term as their board term.
If they're no longer on the board, then they.
Yeah.
Okay, so that covers it.
Okay.
Okay.
In regards to the public member of the MDC,
Thank you, Ethan.
the public member of the MDC, actually, I learned the word licentiate. Licentiate. I guess that's a person with a license, right?
Where are you?
On that on the second
here,
to the last
licensing.
paragraph. The public member shall not be a licentiate. Licentiate.
Spell.
Is that? That means the person that holds a license.
Yes, yes.
Well, why couldn't they be a board member of another board? I mean, a licentiate of another board.
Oh,
It's in the statute. I don't know what the reasoning was. I could research it,
no.
It's in statute.
but it's in
It's
Hey, you
statute.
guys know we have a hard stop at 5, right?
Okay, let's move on.
Thank you.
We have a
For
what?
that reminder. We're just getting punchy for you.
Yes, very punchy. Okay.
I like that word, licentiate.
That's the way you say it.
Are we done with
How do
page
you say
16?
Licentiate.
Licentiate.
Can we move to 17?
17, okay. Oh, I got a question now.
On 18, we have to strike the 30-day destruction of the
Wait,
webcast.
we're still on 17.
Oh, sorry.
I have something on 17.
I'm sorry. I thought you said 18.
Okay, so on 17, in the paragraph that starts recruitment efforts for upcoming vacancies. Okay, down at the bottom of that paragraph, MDC members seeking reappointment are not required to be interviewed unless requested by the board. I think they should be interviewed, just regularly.
Well, remember, the problem, though, is that getting them here and whatnot, can we do a Zoom interview or some sort of a Skype
No,
interview?
this is for-
I think they should be interviewed too.
This is
I agree.
MDC members seeking reappointment. That means they're going to be here anyway.
Yeah.
Because they meet the day before our meeting.
That's true.
Yeah, I agree.
This is
Sometimes
MDC
we might have multiple
seeking
candidates.
reappointment.
Why do you believe
Because we've had some that we thought maybe shouldn't get reappointment.
We've had a lot of them, when they're up for reappointment, do come for.
Yeah.
before
You
us,
guys
right?
need to talk into a microphone.
Sorry.
To answer your question about Zoom, we could use, we've done WebEx before, and by we I mean, sorry, optometry board, have had multiple meetings using WebEx, and that is a capability that we could do.
Well, I think, but Kathy, was it Kathy's point or whoever made it that they're here anyway? So,
Yeah, the day before.
And they should be interviewed.
I think they should be interviewed and be voted on.
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree.
Is everybody
can we
agree on
strike
that?
that? I agree.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes, I've always done it that way too.
Okay, great. Okay, now we can move to 18, I think. Everybody else?
Can we
okay with
just be
17?
clear for the record what we're striking on page 17? It's,
Right, and we're not done with 17 because we got to make that same edit about the webcast
I think
being available.
I think we are striking the word not and striking unless requested by the board.
Would you,
So it would read, MDC members seeking reappointment are required to be interviewed.
it's the sentence above the text in red strike through on page 17.
Should it say in-person interview?
that would preclude us using like a,
Yeah, and it's possible that if they were sick or there was something else going on, we could facilitate a webcast interview. I think we should allow the flexibility.
I just don't
I
want
agree.
it to be a piece of paper and then that's all you get, though. I'm just trying
No,
to
I-
avoid that.
Oh, there's one more thing on 17 also. It's Tara's comment. Are we specifying that the MDC meets 4 times per year? It says at least 3.
how many times do we meet? 4.
4.
I just want to point out that by statute, boards are only required to meet twice a year, starting in January. So there's no requirement for the committee, or there won't be as of January, to meet at least 3 times a year, unless that's a board policy.
So the statute says that they have to meet more than we do.
The
It's
the
not-
statute,
this is right.
the statute would say that we have to meet less than they do because of our policy.
Well, the statute says we have to meet twice a year.
Twice.
That's right.
In this policy, we would have them meeting 3 times.
We have to meet a minimum of twice
Is
a
it-
year,
so you-
correct?
Do you suggest just leaving it the way it is?
Or changing it to 2.
Changing it to 2, okay.
At least 2 times per year?
Just to make it
Right, because
consistent with what we have?
Right, I'd probably maintain the consistency with the board
Okay.
meetings.
Anything else on 17?
Oh, wait. Judy, did you want some on the webcast? No, that was. Oh,
I
sorry.
just want to make sure
Sorry.
it doesn't go away if the DCA is webcast, that it doesn't, 30 days or
Yeah.
whatever, like that last one said, and then
Okay.
destroy it. They should be available forever.
That would be at the top of page 18, first paragraph.
So we're striking, but may be erased or destroyed 30 days after recording.
Right.
Anything else on page 18?
There is a requirement for the DEC committee to meet at least 3 times. Is that something you feel important to change also?
Who are you asking?
If we want to be consistent, you might want to consider it. But I don't think that DEC, and Ethan can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it does correlate to a board meeting like the MDC does.
No, it is independent, and they typically meet 3 times a year.
Yeah, I don't see why it has to be tied to
Okay, I'm just
ours.
checking to make sure. Okay.
And I think they need to meet to make sure they keep on top of those people, yeah. Okay, anything else on 18?
that sounded so condescending.
Page 19. Let's see, I've got some notes here. So under AAVSB, I think, Tara, you have a note here speak to our goal to attend the annual AAVSB meeting. Except when they meet in one of those states where we're not allowed to go to.
The ones that don't allow games.
Which is growing.
My comment is just about complete disclosure.
Was complete to scope, huh?
Right, but that's not me.
Okay. Is there anything there's a note there, is there anything we
So
need to
what's complete
change?
disclosure?
I'm not sure who posted that.
Okay, she was just clarifying that she was not the person making this comment.
Right.
But we're
Okay.
looking at the question, if we want to address, do we want to speak to our goal to attend the annual AABSB meeting and represent interests of California?
See, I think, I'm wondering if part of that is as a result of the fact that maybe, and I'm not sure it's even necessary, it's like to ensure, excuse me, consumer protection and whatever veterinary, in the veterinary industry, it's very important to have representation at the AAVSB on a national level for California or something like that, just to put it down on record why it's important for us to have representation there. Given what happened the year we couldn't go there, is that why you think that's there? But I'm not sure it's applicable to even put it in that line, but it is important to the function of the board to know what's going on with the AVSB
Yes.
and be involved in all of those national
I'm not
policy areas.
I'm not sure that it's necessary to add anything because it does say that the board also strives to maintain representation. So it's basically stating on record that this is our goal to maintain representation. But I don't know if
Okay.
we need to add that it's our goal to attend an annual AABSB meeting. I think it's
And it
stated
says
there.
participating as a board, as an AAVSB board member here. Does that mean we
What we strive for.
proactively?
What we
have people-
proactively strive for.
Well, it's talking about supporting a member that's interested in doing that. So I'm assuming the support is monetary? About, as far as travel to the meetings and whatnot?
Yeah.
AABSB pays for 2 members,
Yeah.
2 people to go.
Ethan, do you recall whether this issue involved travel to states for national conferences where the states were on a prohibited travel list?
Oh,
Were we trying to
Well,
address?
so we always do try to travel the annual meeting. Sometimes we are restricted due to governor's travel restrictions. But my point in this was because we talk about striving to maintain representation, but we also strive to attend every annual meeting.
Yeah,
So that was my point, because we're calling it out that we want to maintain representation. But we actively do seek to attend every meeting since I've been with the board, notwithstanding any travel restrictions.
Okay.
So perhaps your suggestion here was just adding
Yeah,
And attend.
attendance
Yeah.
at the meetings? Okay.
make sure we maintain our attendance if at all
Is
possible.
everybody okay with that?
oh, okay.
Everybody on board?
And something about adding an attendance at the annual conference or
Yes.
something like that? Okay.
Judy and Alana, you okay with that?
Yes.
Thank you, Ethan.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and then Tara, you had something under complaint disclosure?
Right, I think Amanda actually made this change, but I can explain it. So
I never
the
realized that those
board
initials are who made that
maintains a policy of
I didn't either.
making complaints to the board confidential under the California Public Records Act exemption for complaints and investigation records. So this is just restating the CPRA exemption in effect by saying complaints are not subject to disclosure. What we're trying to flesh out a little bit here is that citations are public for 5 years and then purged unless there's some formal disciplinary matter within that 5 years. I think it's really just a clarification here of the citation term because that language that's being added is in the regulation itself.
The
5-year purge is in the regulation, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Of the
Yep.
citations? Oh, okay, so there's not, we can't change that.
And I think the clarification too is when that 5-year period starts the clock, because in the current policy, it says from the issue date, and that's not the case in the public, I believe in the statute. It's 5 years from the resolution, so I think that's why Anne Marie would have
Wanted to change that?
wanted to change it to be more consistent.
So that means if they have a cite and fine, then that's not disclosed. But if a year
It
later
is.
they get to formal discipline, then the cite and fine also becomes
No.
disclosed?
The
What does that mean?
complaint leading up to a citation or formal disciplinary action is not disclosed.
Correct.
A citation that is issued with a fine or any type of citation, that is publicly disclosable
Okay.
For 5 years?
and
Do
will
we-
be in the licensee's record for 5 years from the date of resolution and then will be purged
Okay.
unless there's a disciplinary action against that same licensee within that 5 years.
And resolution includes any payment that's ordered and order of abatement that's ordered. So there could be a period of time that passes after that 5 years because it hasn't been resolved. And so it could be public for longer than 5 years.
Okay.
So, and then, so you get cited, you receive a citation for an act. I can't pronounce it this hour, this afternoon. So you get a citation for an act.
That's my favorite word.
And then it gets purged after 5 years, unless that citation gets elevated to part of the formal discipline, and then it is part of his permanent record.
Correct, because when you look at the enforcement history, oftentimes if you are cited for something and then it happens again, and then we take discipline, that becomes part of the discipline record or factors of mitigation,
If there was some
of
citation
aggravation.
not related to the formal discipline, then that still gets purged after 5 years.
It doesn't have to be related to the next formal discipline. It's just that
Unless the citation is part of the formal discipline. So what if it's not part of the formal discipline? What if he gets in trouble for something completely different? Do the original citations get purged after 5 years?
that's a really good point. That's not what the regulation says. Let me look it up real quick so we can just tweak that.
It's good, because I have a question on this, the second paragraph, the board only provides citation and
And
fine.
I'd like to change the location of only in that sentence. That's
Well-
my little pet peeve.
I actually think we should post it online.
Ethan says they are published on the web. Am I wrong?
No. So citations, well, it
publish-
is.
Look up for each, under the licensee.
So the problem there for license lookup and citations are unlicensed people who are cited. There's not tied to a
Yeah,
license
of
lookup.
course.
So I do think that we should publish citations on our website.
In addition to attaching those citations to the licensee, look up as well. So you have-
Yes, I think that is necessary
full.
when they're trying to look up a license the license history of the licensee. But I think there's a huge gap when you're not posting citations on your website for unlicensed practice.
I agree. Transparency, that should be there somewhere. I didn't know it wasn't. So that's what you want to put something in here to broaden that under the licensee or registrant or unlicensed or bad actors.
Tom Cruise.
So I know it's late in the day. I can tell you that this orange language is incorrect. It needs to be changed to specify that the citation is purged after 5 years unless the licensee is subject to formal discipline within 5 years immediately following the citation order, at which time the citation may become part of the permanent enforcement record, not part of the formal discipline. So we need to revise that to conform to the language of the regulation, and I'd like to do that with your permission offline.
Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
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 So with that, I think we should still go to that paragraph that says the board only provides citation and fine informations in response to specific individual written requests. I think that whole sentence should be struck. And I think that we should have a policy to post citations on our website.
Okay, so we're going to strike that whole first sentence of that second paragraph.
And you'd cite
So
this,
the
strike
paragraph
the
would
second
start with, the
sentence.
board does not publish individual names of licensees or registrants.
I think perhaps we should consider striking that entire paragraph
Okay, the whole paragraph, okay.
and
What's everybody's
stating
feelings on that?
that we will post citations on our website.
So we don't have to
Thank
say
you,
we're going
Amanda.
to, but we're not going to say we're not
That's
going
Amanda
to.
posting.
So
Is that what most other boards do? They publish their cite and fine?
It's not formal discipline.
It's, right, so it's citations, and it's kind of across the board. There are boards that started, let me back up. There's a general BNP code, I think it's BNP 27, that requires specific boards to post board action on their website. So those boards who are listed, and BNB is one of them, once we were able to attach it to Breeze, many boards opted to stop posting it onto their website with the thought that they're maintaining the requirement in the statute, which is true because it's board action against the licensee. So a lot of them stopped posting to their website. At Optometry, we opted to continue posting our actions on our website. One, because if it's already available on our website, this is citations and discipline, when we get PRA requests requesting information, if it's already on our website, we can point them to the website information for them to do, so it saves staff time for PRAs, which was amazing. But also, it kept citations for unlicensed people on our website where you do not have that capability online on the license lookup.
As a consumer, I like that idea of having it available online, but a question to the unlicensed practitioner, the unlicensed activity of those individuals who are not licensed or registered. Do we have any privacy issues by posting that on a website, Tara, about their site? They've been cited, they've been fined, but is there any kind
A
of?
site is public information. A
Okay.
citation is.
Fine.
My only concern is making sure that pursuant to the regulation and what the licensee is told
This is
in
not a
the
licensed
citation,
person.
an unlicensed person?
Not a licensed person.
An unlicensed people are not available in Breeze. You can't look an unlicensed person up because they're not associated with any license number.
When you're using that phrase, published on our website, like a citation, a cite and fine is published on our website, you're referring to the license lookup option that a consumer has.
Not necessarily. So you could refer them to the license lookup, but the problem comes in with the unlicensed people. So at Optometry, when we posted it, we broke it up by year, and we posted all the actions by category, so by discipline or by citations, and you do a blurb and you do a link to the actual public document.
Okay. So you can also find it in that location. But then if it's a simple cite and fine, it gets purged after 5 years. And, and cite and fines are not reported to the National Disciplinary Database. So if a person is applying for a license in another state, and that other state does a lookup to see if there's any disciplinary action, a cite and fine won't appear.
I can tell you that sometimes other boards have reported citations onto the data bank, so it doesn't mean that it won't appear because it's several
California,
states.
I'm
Are
talking
we
about
reporting
our
to Vault? the cite and fines?
I don't believe so, but I can double check that because it's not considered discipline.
So if I have a citation from California and I move to Florida, like I ever would, and I apply to Florida, would those citations show up?
I do not believe so for the data bank,
Yeah,
but I can double check that.
okay.
But it would be on our website
And for the record, I don't have any cites or fines
yet.
yet.
Okay, anything else on page 19? Are we done with that? Are we all in concurrence? Page 20, anything? We're almost done here.
I'm so sorry, just for
Okay.
consensus, we are striking that paragraph and adding that it's the board policy to post citations and action on our website.
Is
Correct?
that everybody's understanding? Everybody's in concurrence?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, good. Page 20. Anything on page 20?
Oh. We're gonna lose our last audience member.
That's,
I have a, I'm not sure if this is on 20 or 21.
bye Val, thank you
Bye,
for
Val,
coming.
thank you.
Thank you, Val.
Good luck in the smoke.
Okay, nothing on page 20?
Well,
Yep, page 20?
yeah, and I guess it could be in 21, so move to 21. I think it's the
Okay.
same thing.
So is it on both? Is this last item? Is
I-
that
Well,
right?
I have a question.
Yes.
How many, it says as a general rule, most stipulated settlements and proposed decisions are well-reasoned, but I have to say, I don't think
Tara,
that's
Tara
true.
didn't write that.
Yeah. I don't know if we should really brag on that. I think we ought to think about
Or
saying.
reasoned, we could just take well out, but reasoned. But I mean, in general.
Can we just eliminate that whole sentence and say, if stipulated settlements and proposed decisions are not well-reasoned, consistent, and blah, 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 consider rejecting? I don't know. I don't know if it's just a rash of problems or whatnot, but it seems to me most of them are not.
I'd just like to have a method of getting some of our money back for those ones that we have to end up doing ourselves anyway, but that's just wishful thinking, but
On many of the steps, I don't know. I think overall, it's some of these other issues that we've had.
It's
If you
mostly the
think back
proposed
through the
decisions
years
that,
of-
it's mostly
Yeah.
the decisions, so.
But,
okay, so did you have a question on what, the
yeah,
end
I
of 20
I had
and
a
the
question,
beginning
and
of
it's
21?
part about the voting, the mail voting particularly, where we have choices of
Yes.
hold, do not adopt, hold, reject, right? Do not adopt. I think there's some confusion because there's some, I don't know if there's anything we can do about that here, but it seems like hold for discussion and maybe reject or do not adopt are very similar. Because if you have one person doing not adopt and one person doing hold for discussion and the rest doing adopt, I'm just trying to think about,
This was specifically, we're talking about one case in this last bunch of cases that we
just,
did.
I've noticed it, yeah.
So there were something like 4 to adopt. I voted to hold for discussion, somebody else voted to deny. But because both of us didn't say
The same
hold for
thing.
discussion, it went through. If the other person, instead of deny, had said hold for discussion, it would have been held.
Right.
I
Right.
think we should hold those.
I think it's in your practice act. I hope it is. I may be remembering a different client practice act, but somewhere I think it says that to hold, it takes two.
Yes, it takes
Members.
two.
It
does
But
take
what we're
two.
saying
And you
is,
have to hold. It cannot be reject because a reject is a specific decision. Hold is, I'm not sure what to do yet. Reject
Well,
is,
Hold is just,
Done.
yeah.
but you have to understand our intent there. Both of us, I said hold for discussion, the person that said deny, we're both like, I don't think so, I'm not sure about this. And I think we should count those as holding. I think we should hold those for discussion.
Well, or we should at least be maybe counseled
It
as
shouldn't
far
go
as
through.
what, it probably
Right.
is worth talking about. I feel the same way. A
Yes.
couple of times
Yeah.
I've thought, I don't know if I'm supposed to reject or hold this
Right.
or what to do.
So I figure like the safest position is in some cases to hold, but if
Yeah.
not enough people say hold, then, you
If
know,
one says hold and one
I think
says
hold and
deny,
reject are really similar, frankly.
we lose and it goes through.
No. If the
It's not
person who voted
held, and
no
the
really wanted to hold, why didn't they vote hold?
Right.
right?
I think that it should be.
No means no.
I think if a member is not sure, they should vote to hold.
Yeah.
I would be concerned about holding because a member could be very sure to reject, and then it's held because we have one hold. I think that it should just be understood that if we want to hold, we need to, and if you are unsure, please vote hold.
So maybe that's, we all just understand when we're doing cases that if you're not 100% sure, but you're leaning that way, vote, hold for discussion.
Well, and the other thing is, if you're unsure of what your vote means, whether you think reject means it's going to be discussed, you should reach out to the staff member sending you that mail vote to say, I'm not sure what my vote means. Can someone explain it? We want you to have enough information that you can make an informed decision. And if you're unsure of what your decision means, let us know.
So I think those cases that we do in person where we talk them out, I think those cases are, I think that
Those are very different.
hashing them out and talking them over, I think it really helps. And where we
Yeah.
do those mail votes, we don't have that. And so I guess if we can't change that, if that's not allowed, then I think just the members should know that, hey, if you're not 100% sure, it's better to vote, hold for discussion, because that's what your other people are going to be doing.
And I think what we can do on our end is when we are sending that, we can send out reminders of exactly what that means on your decisions.
Because it does take two
To
holds to hold something, right?
Alternatively,
And
I
two
can give you.
rejects to reject?
It's better to say hold than deny.
If you're
in some-
unsure.
In some cases.
That's right, so it doesn't take, what is it if you non-adopt?
A majority.
You need a
The
majority, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yes,
it's
the
a
language there,
majority.
The hold versus,
It's the
yeah.
majority of who's voting. It's
Yes.
not a majority of the board, because as
Yes.
we've discussed, sometimes not all members are
Got it.
submitting votes.
Okay,
And if you're still unsure, I'll give you Tara's cell phone number.
I have it.
And for the record, we lost the DCI guy now, too. We are completely alone.
We are. We still have our webcast person.
Actually, Judy's right, we do have, oh no, we have 20 more minutes.
Okay.
Hard stop in 20 minutes.
Are we done on page 21? Okay, 22. Anything there?
I did.
I see lots of notes here. Do those need to get incorporated? Lots of notes over here on the right.
Right here, I'm really talking about, let's remove the attachments, because you've got some attachments that we do and you don't attach others that are important. So you've already decided that you want to remove attachments 1 and 2.
Where are you at attachments 1 and 2?
So I'm on page 22 in the middle. And I've got all this like pink highlight stuff. So you've got order fixing time for submission of written oral argument, attachment 2. We're just going to strike through attachment 2. It's still going to list what will happen with a petition for reconsideration. Right, and I'm really just encouraging you the reasons why attaching the attachments is a bad idea. You've already determined you want to do that.
You have the comment, consider changing this provision to allow board staff to issue served notice of deadline for submission of written argument or additional evidence.
This is up to you guys. So when we do a non-adopt, you can do, and perhaps Jessica can weigh in on what she prefers. It's really just a procedure issue, whether or not you want your board president having to sign every order fixing time for submission, or if you think that it's okay that staff issues a notice of deadline for submission of written and oral arguments. It's arguably procedural. And because the board president is already signing the order rejecting the proposed decision, so the board has spoken, and that that decision is being signed off by the president. But now when we get into procedure on a deadline to submit written arguments because the board has received the transcript, arguably that could be handled by board staff rather than having to submit these to the board president for signature. That's all this is. If you feel more comfortable with the board president signing off on all of the board communications, then we will make no change.
What do you prefer?
I actually don't have a preference. I think that we worked out electronic signature with the president, but I see the benefit in allowing leeway to allowing staff to sign it. It is just a procedural document.
Although having the board president, there's accountability that way.
I'm in favor of keeping it as it is, having the board president sign them. As long as they sign like Donald Trump does, up and down and up and down.
But again, I don't want to slow process down. Cheryl, you've most recently been through this with,
So is.
Electronic
system.
Electronic
No.
signatures, it doesn't.
Yeah, we're doing electronic signatures, so
Yeah.
it's been fine. I used to have
No,
to
so we have.
physically sign them and mail them back.
So we do have an electronic signature that was created by Office of Information Services for us. And so the process now is I send the email to Dr. Waterhouse and I ask for permission to use her electronic signature on the document, at which time, once I receive approval, I put it on there.
Yeah, that seems fine.
Okay, anything, what else here, Tara?
Matter will be disgusting.
So, in the last open bullet point, the matter will be discussed in closed session at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. We're talking about when a petition for reconsideration is granted and the board is going to review it again. All I think we need to do in front of this statement is add, if the matter is not remanded to the ALJ, the matter, the matter will be discussed in closed session at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. Just to clarify that the board could grant the petition for reconsideration and remand the case, but if it doesn't, you're going to meet in closed session about it. It's just a clarification.
Fine.
Everybody okay? Okay with that? Anything else
Yeah,
on,
fine.
anything else on page 22?
Okay. Oh, here it is.
Yeah, and the open bullet above the one we were just discussing, upon close of the fixed time for submission of written oral argument and receipt of hearing transcripts. The petition is sent to the board for review. We need to just add that, and after receipt of written arguments from the parties, the petition is sent to the board for review.
Okay, where is that? I'm sorry.
The open bullet above,
The la,
so this, not the bottom open bullet, but the one above.
oh, here.
Jessica? So we're talking here about after the board has granted a petition for reconsideration. At that point, the proposed decision that the board initially approved is put on hold, and the matter is reconsidered. So there's, I don't know where this came from, but it says the petition is sent to the board for review, but this is after the petition's been granted. So I don't think it's the petition that's being reviewed. I think the original case is being reviewed. Or rather, the decision is being reviewed.
So what needs to
So,
change?
yeah, especially, it's mostly in cases where the board adopts a proposed decision. It's sent to the respondent, they disagree with it, they say, hey, we need you to reconsider this decision. And the board says, yes, we should, we accept that, we're going to go ahead and take another look at it. They're not looking at the petition again.
So, but it also could include the petitions for reinstatement or early termination and modification.
Sure, but that's a different section, because all of these bullets are under votes to grant the petition for reconsideration.
Okay, yeah. And I
So
agree.
To be changed to.
I think it just needs to get changed to the matter.
Yeah, I agree.
Can you,
Nothing else.
okay.
Everybody okay? Judy and Alana, you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, is that it for page 22? Tara, you done with page 22?
Yes, I am.
Okay, everybody else is done with page 22?
So done.
On to page 23.
I guess I have a point of clarification.
Okay, while everybody's looking at page 23 here, Judy and Alana, I'd just like to confirm, do you both have to leave at 5, or can one of you stay after?
No, we both have to leave because she's in my building.
Okay,
Yeah, keys are the issue, so I've got to lock up and go.
okay. Okay, page 23, let's go fast.
Well, I think, did Jamie had a point?
I just wanted to clarify I think it's the second paragraph under petition for modification. It's a little hazy because it says that according to code section, we may deny without a hearing or argument any petition filed within a period of 2 years from the effective date.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did have a reg change
But,
there.
yeah, I thought
Yeah.
something happened that
Yeah,
changed
we
that.
did, there was a regulation that we changed.
So that should be
Yeah,
2
because it
years.
was we changed it to, it was a revocation for a vet, or?
I actually think it was a statute that was
Maybe it was
changed.
statute, okay, one or the other.
So I think if
So,
Yeah.
then I think that the board could just delegate Tara and I to take a look at it, make sure it's consistent with the
Okay,
statute.
can I,
Yeah.
yeah, let's do that. Just take a look and see if that's
Okay.
right. Okay,
Just change that.
thank you, that's all I had.
and anything, what's at the bottom of that page?
This is just noting that 4887 on petitions for reinstatement require at least 5 members to approve.
Okay,
So it's requesting to add just a reminder that these types of petitions take a vote of 5. If there's only 5 people looking at it, all 5 have to approve it.
okay.
Okay.
So do you have anything else on page 23, or are you okay, Tara?
Yeah, I'm fine. I just want to add that 4887 clarification.
Right.
You-
And, go ahead.
You may want to consider, when it says conditions as it determines necessary, you might want to add and in accordance with the disciplinary guidelines. So you have a reference document
And you're referring to which part?
in that last paragraph when it says the board considers reinstating the license or
Okay.
registration. It may impose terms and conditions as it determines necessary in accordance with the disciplinary guidelines.
Okay,
That's a
Okay.
good way to put it.
that's a good point.
Is there anything else for page 23? page 24. I hope nobody has any disagreement with any of the acronyms. On page 25, then, Terry, you'd like to
Delete.
delete the attachments?
The attachments.
Okay, any questions on 25?
Oh, and those are the
So we're deleting
attachments.
those two attachments anyway. Okay, so, so Terry, you want to read your special motion?
We're not doing the special motion because this is your administrative
Oh, okay, so we don't need
manual,
the
so it's
special
not,
motion.
yeah, it's not a rulemaking
Okay,
problem.
okay.
Do we need a motion to direct you to main?
Yeah, to make all the necessary changes and,
No, but they need a motion to accept
They do, but I don't do the 45-day.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to make the changes that we just discussed on this document for the Administrative Procedure Manual as discussed. Is that clear enough, or do I have to say every little thing?
Can we include
second.
adopting the Administrative Procedure Manual as amended today and delegate authority to legal counsel and executive officer to make any non-substantive changes and ensure the intent of the conversations are included?
Yeah, that's fine. That sounds good.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any other board discussion? We don't have any public to, oh, no, there's a person in the public.
That's
I guess,
not
I know, but she's out there. Do you have any questions? No. Okay, call for the vote.
Ms. Bowler,
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury, Ms. Laredo,
Yes.
Ms. Mancuso,
Yes.
Dr. Noland,
Yes.
Dr. Nunez,
Yes.
Ms. Yanis,
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now, in our, 8 minutes that we have left, what's the most important things to get done? For my board president report and the RBT report, should we just email those? I mean, should we have them do reports?
I'd like to know what the California Horse Racing Board partnership is. What is that?
So,
We can talk about that.
well, my all report is all provided and it's online. My concern is that your report is not, and so I don't know if you want to just run down that.
Okay, I'll read my report here.
But then I can answer your question too.
It's from September 13th to the 15th this year. I attended the AAVSB annual meeting in Washington, D.C., along with Kathy Bowler and Jessica. We watched a 3-hour mock board meeting, which was very interesting. And needless to say, every state has different protocols on how they conduct meetings, how they do discipline, and how they interact with the legislature. They did, Kathy can tell you some more about that, included throwing things at each other. So I think we're pretty good.
Board members, public.
They did have a suggestion to have some board meetings at veterinary schools, so we're planning to have a January meeting at UC Davis and a meeting at Western, hopefully in April, it sounds like. Originally it was October, but now maybe April. A full summary of this meeting, including the action taken, can be viewed at their website. At the August meeting, the board delegated authority to the president and vice president to provide feedback to the AAVSB regarding their proposed Practice Act model changes and the 2018-1 resolution, in which we did. The board's concerns specific to establishing a VCPR via telehealth methods were shared during this meeting at AAVSB. However, the updates to the Practice Act model were passed. The AAVSB believed it is important to reiterate that the Practice Act model is a fluid model that will always be subject to modifications that reflect changes in technology and professional regulation. California was really behind the 8 ball because we couldn't go to Texas, and that's really where most of this discussion took place, and we were just way too late to try and change anything. So we do here obviously have problems with this statement, not the least of which that it violates federal law. So this resolution 2018-1 was passed. The full text of the resolution can be found at their website with passage of, I think I duplicated some of this. So this results in the following. that member boards agree to provide the leadership of the association information on any issues or laws from each jurisdiction that would limit the liability to submit already public information to the AAVSB Viva database. Further, member boards agreed to provide the leadership of the association information with any statute, rules, regulations, or policy that would impede the AAVSB staff from collecting, verifying, and transmitting to member boards the primary source data at the applicant's request, such as college transcripts and verification of licensure status. So board staff and legal counsel will work to provide the necessary information. On September 19th, we sent letters to the governor in support of SB 1480, the omnibus bill, in support of AB 2215, the marijuana bill, in support of SB 1491, the omnibus bill, and opposing AB 2138, the licensing board's changes, but to no avail. On October 2nd, I participated in a webinar, and Dr. Sullivan and Jessica attended in person. This was Earn and Learn. This is a program to implement AB 2105, which was just signed by the governor. This program mainly affects the human health fields, but RVTs were mentioned as an area where stakeholders could be involved to look at barriers to licensing. So in compliance with this bill, again, AB 2105, this is Rodriguez of 2016, the DCA conducted the stakeholder process in relation to the California Workforce Development Board's 2015 Expanding Earn and Learn Models in the California Healthcare Industry report. DCA is working to update policies and remove barriers to facilitate the development of earn and learn training programs in the allied health professions. This meeting introduced attendees to the DCA's implementation efforts. Planning committee members discussed convening subcommittees to focus efforts in the areas of nursing, specialty nursing, certified nursing assistants, and licensed vocational nurse, medical assisting, mental health, and specialty imaging. And then on October 12th, both Jessica and I attended the Board of Governors meeting through the CVMA, and that was in Palm Springs. Board updates were provided, including a recap of the August meeting, current issues, legislation, board activities, and statistics. And then on November 8th, I participated in a AAVSB webinar on antibiotic stewardship, and this was given by Dr. Mike Murphy from the FDA. Most of the discussion was on large animal medicine and the VFD, the Veterinary Feed Directive, but they did mention that they do have goals for household pets, and they'd have time for questions. So I asked the question, since it has been shown that human telemedicine overuses antibiotics, are you concerned with the recent changes to relax the VCPR rules? And so this Dr. Murphy from FDA, he did hesitate for a little while, and then he said, well, he's willing to work with groups on their VCPR, but that federal law says that a VCPR cannot be established solely by electronic means. Once a VCPR is established, telemedicine can be used as follow-up, but not to establish the original VCPR. So that is my report. And we've got like 1 minute left. So what would you like to
Well, since we
end
have
with?
1 minute, I do think that we need to end it with letting everybody know that the meeting tomorrow is canceled, and when we adjourn, it will be adjourning the whole meeting. But Jennifer, if you want to take a couple seconds.
Yeah, for my RVT report, I have nothing new and exciting. Everything was addressed in the meeting. So the one thing that we will follow up on next time is that legal counsel is going to do some further research on the potential for a mail-in exam for the RVT California law portion, and we will report back on that. And the errors in the examination plan was addressed because that is now posted online, and we are still working to get the pass rates for the VTNE per school, which was another concern, and that's all I have.
So, and for clarification too, the executive officer and staff reports are all up online. But again, if any members have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at any time.
Anybody have anything else? I want to thank you for your participation. We actually did get a lot done this session. So, do we have a motion
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
A second? Okay,
I'll second.
the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.